Hi guys!
Today we are going to show you
What Disneyland Paris could have looked like.
and we can tell you it's way different. You might think that when Disney decides to build a new Disneyland park, they choose to create an exact copy of the original in California. Main Street with the cute houses, a tram pulled by horses going up and down the street, and of course at the end of Main Street, the beautiful castle. It's a formula that never gets old and which proved itself to be successful. It would be easy for Disney to copy and paste this formula all over the world, but the opposite is true. In fact, Disneyland Paris was supposed to set in an entirely different era and also have a completely different Main Street than all of the other Disneyland parks.
Most of the Disney parks have a turn-of-the-century style Main Street, based on Marceline, Missouri. For Disneyland Paris, the Disney Imagineers had something else in mind. The Roaring Twenties with outlaws, gangsters, cinema, jazz music and speakeasies. All based on the 1920 and 1930 films depicted in New York and Chicago. Well, the whole story about how Disneyland could have looked like came from Mr. Sotto. He was an Imagineer for Disney and he was one of the developers for Disneyland Paris. And his name is here on the wall.
Eddie Sotto wanted something different for Disneyland Paris. The Imagineers thought that the Europeans were too familiar with the Victorian style. In the USA, houses from the Victorian time are rare, but in Europe, entire streets from the Victorian era are quite common. That's why the Imagineers thought to create a surrounding that would trigger the imagination of the Europeans. The America through the eyes of the European, with slapstick humored gangsters and non-violent speakeasies. Right now in Main Street USA, every building is a different shop in Victorian style. Now if they would have gone with the 1920s, 1930s style of America, every shop would reflect a different immigrant. There would be an elevated tram track going above the street, and you would be able to look inside the shop of this immigrant to see what they sell, what they are doing, and also where they came from.
The tram would go through Main Street and exit Main Street towards Discoveryland. There would be an exit and you would enter the city of the future. The only thing left of that idea is the theming in the arcade.
Although they altered that idea from the 1920s to the Victorian time.
What we see here is an idea of how the Victorians would think of the future.
And here are some inventions that the Victorians did.
New York doesn't look like this in 2000.
The main square would have looked very different if the 1920s plan would have sticked. Did you know that Walt's an American restaurant was originally planned to become a speakeasy? Guests would enter the building by thinking it's a flower shop, but then walls would turn to reveal a cotton club style jazz hotspot. The flower shop never was, and Walt's restaurant came instead. However, the name of the street still reminds us of the flower store turns cotton club idea.
The elevated tram, which was like a people mover, would leave from Main Street and enter Discoveryland. There would be a train station, which you would exit into Discoveryland, and then the train itself would loop back in front of the castle, back into Main Street.
So what you're saying is we could have had a people mover?
Yes. Keeping up with the 1920s theme, there would be cars, and what you need with a car? A service station. This would have been a service station, with gas pumps and a garage. The only thing that's left of this idea is in the clothing shop down Main Street, Main Street Motors. the concept art, it was a service station for cars. This is what they did with it in real life here in Disneyland Paris. All bits and pieces from an old car, spare spark plugs, and tires, loads of tires. An old tin can from General Electric, the company founded by Edison. GE was once one of the sponsors of the Carousel of Progress. Another remnant of the concept art is the picture of the garage over here, the service station, and the garage doors.
If everything would be 1920s in Disneyland Paris, then the Disney princesses should be dressed like that too, right? In the Disneyland Hotel shop, they give us an idea of what the princesses would be wearing if the 1920s theme would actually went through.
Another idea of Eddie Sotto was a Cinevision theater with big wide screens. And that building would be, as far as we can tell from the article, situated over here. In the renderings we found in the article on Blogspot, there was a limousine, and that limousine was in front of a theater and in front of the service station. That limousine was here in Disneyland Paris. Alas, it's gone now.
Another very remarkable thing they kept from the 1920s concept art are the signs on the roof. Especially above Mainstreet motors, this is still very visible. The Imagineers created a forced perspective of distant buildings by putting signs on the roof. When you look at the facades a little longer, you'll notice that they designed different roofs to create depth. And there's more. They also used a clever trick to make us believe that the buildings are bigger than they actually are. This building, for example, looks like it's 3 stories high. But in reality, it might not even be 2 stories. By building the facades in a certain perspective and putting the windows on well-thought positions, from Main Street it seems as if these houses are very tall. In reality, however, you would have to bend your knees to be able to look through the window of the 2nd floor.
So it's not as big as you might think.
The 1920s idea eventually was declined. Eddie Sotto believes it would have been a better design for Disneyland Paris, and he claims that also Michael Eisner agreed with him. However, it seems that eventually declining the design was both a creative issue as a financial issue due to the higher costs of building a 1920s Main Street.
A lot has happened here in the Disneyland Paris for the last 25 years.
And even before those 25 years, a lot has happened too to make this park a reality.
So, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, like, subscribe, and if you have any comments for us, leave them in Twitter or Instagram.
And maybe next time we'll see you in Main Street.
Bye! Annelies, what did you find?
Thomas O'Malley, Mally the alley cat.